So this is our open Q&A. So for those of you joining us live, if you have a question, please go into the chat. I know normally we do these webinars, there's a Q&A button. We do not have a Q&A button on this because we're in meeting mode, not webinar mode. Sorry about that. So just go in the chat. I will keep checking things. I will read them off. I did have a few questions that people submitted via email. So with the three of us, and we might get Dr. O'Hara, Dr. Patterson, who joined us earlier in the webinar series to join us. But again, we've got myself, Dr. Bill Rawls, Dr. Tom Moorcroft here to field your questions. So our first question comes from Teresa here. What is your feeling regarding the brand Evergreen Herbs? They are Chinese herbs that I get from my acupuncturist.
Not familiar with that one.
Yeah, so Evergreen is a good company. I mean, there's several good herbal companies that make Chinese herbs. Evergreen, as far as I'm aware, is a good company. Like any good herbal company, you always want to make sure that they do third-party independent certificate of analysis to ensure that the herbs are clean of pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, things of that nature. I know Chinese herbs kind of get a bum rap sometimes, particularly those that do come from China, because to be honest, sometimes they can be a bit questionable on their production, and we've had studies done before that have found that some of these herbs are contaminated with things that we really don't want to put in our body. But as far as I know, Evergreen is a good company. My ex-wife is an acupuncturist, and so she used to use some of the Evergreen products. And I think, any professional acupuncturist is also pretty mindful of only using products that are clean, I would hope. So again, as far as I know, I think they're fine. Catherine's asking, I have an overactive bladder, tested to find 26 bacteria. Wow. Also, gut test showed 2 protozoa, Dientamoeba fragilis, and Endolimex nana. Doctor prescribed single drug for all of it, tinidazole. What do you guys think?
Well, that's an antifungal drug. You know, for a long time, it was thought that the bladder and urine should be sterile. And, there's plenty of evidence now suggesting that the bladder and actually the whole urinary tract has its own microbiome. So, you have normal flora of the bladder. So finding bacteria in the bladder can sometimes be misleading because some of those things may be normal flora. Overactive bladder, or there are various contributing factors to that, and it's something that I managed in my GYN practice quite a lot. Mainly, back in the day with antispasmodic drugs of various kinds, which were none of them were ideal. But now I look at it more, and I think there are bacteria like mycoplasmas, ureaplasmas that can play a role in overactive bladder, interstitial cystitis, and other kinds of conditions like that. I think we mentioned in one of our previous lectures Uva which is a nice herb for the bladder, but one that I have had some success with interstitial cystitis, bladder irritability and spasm, is an herb from the Amazon called Anamu, Anamu. It's a garlic relative, and so it has some good activity against mycoplasmas. That's what it's known for, but also some parasitic, anti-parasitic properties, and it's been used for a variety of things. But I like it because it's concentrated in the urine and concentrated in the stool. You'll have kind of you have an odor. It's not a bad odor, but you can tell when you're taking it. So it's concentrated there. That's an herb that could be worth trying in that situation. And with the herb, you don't worry about, the toxic side effects as much. So it's something that you can use for suppression for a good while.
Yeah, and I'll agree with Uva ursi. Uva ursi is high in berberine. This is a compound we know has very broad antimicrobial effects. I will argue that Dientamoeba fragilis and Endolimix nana, these are amoebas that may be like normal for a lot of people. They don't necessarily have to be pathogenic. It's kind of like Blastocystis hominis. So unless you're having a lot of GI symptoms, it might be kind of an incidental finding. But again, if you did have an amoeba overgrowth, even something like uva ursi and these berberine complexes can be helpful for certainly amoebic parasitology. So yeah, I think that would be a good approach as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think a quick point on tinidazole, like, I mean, it's used for like bacterial vaginosis, but also like it is an antiparasitic, even though it sounds like fluconazole and itraconazole. So we use it a lot for different parasites, and then
correct.
so it
Yeah.
may have a role in there. I typically wouldn't use it for those two, but you could. The other side note though is if you look at the research on the Lyme round body, which most people call the cyst form, tinidazole is our most active single agent against that. That's a non-botanical. I know we talked on Monday about a lot of the botanicals like Cryptolepis and knotweed and stuff like that that are active against those as well. But it is an antiparasitic that can actually be effective for that. So I mean, again, I probably would move in the direction of all the herbs that Dr. Bill and Dr. Darin were talking about, as rather than going for tinidazole with that, unless it was really pathologic.
Yeah, and even something like slippery elm and marshmallow, which we think of more of a GI demulcent, can be actually very soothing to the bladder. So although it doesn't directly kill the bug, sometimes it can just have a nice soothing effect on the bladder. And we use it for interstitial cystitis and other types of bladder irritable things too.
And I guess too, Darin and Bill, like I mean, I don't know what you guys see, but I see so many people who, if they have Lyme or Bartonella, they certainly can have a lot more hyperactive bladder, either through the impact on the nervous system or directly on the urinary tract. But I see a lot of people where addressing the underlying infections, maybe not directly that are in the urine, but the systemic infections can make a big difference in those situations. And then, it's not necessarily a botanical, and it's kind of a medicine, but not really. But methylene blue is being used more and more in both lower and higher doses, depending upon what you're doing. But it's highly concentrated in the urine, has anti-Lyme, anti-Bartonella properties. And so it's certainly been shown to disrupt those biofilms. So it may have a role in that as well. But again, we're kind of moving more into the medical dye perspective, but certainly a little different than a straight up antibiotic.
Great.
Yeah, that's a good indication for methylene blue. I don't use it a huge amount in my practice, but that would be a good place.
Teresa's asking, what herbs do you suggest for someone with high cholesterol, high LDL, and insulin resistance, not overweight, and exercises regularly? So I'll start. There's a few things you can do. Now, I should qualify this that, maybe define what high cholesterol is high cholesterol. I think in the United States, we are grossly overestimating what high cholesterol really is. And understand the reference range in the United States is different than the entire rest of the world. It is intentional to make you believe you're abnormal when you're really not. The total cholesterol in other countries goes up, I think, to 230. Here it's supposed to be under 200. Your LDL can go up to, I think, 130 or 160 in other parts of the world. Here they want it under 100. So again, if you are someone who familial is genetically disposed to making a lot of cholesterol, that can be partly genetic. But Bill, I'll let you explain again. I think you explained it the other night when we were talking about the liver's capacity to try and compensate for how it's breaking down cholesterol. There may be other issues going on in the liver that's related. And it, by the way, it has nothing to do with diet. They have studied this extensively. Dietary cholesterol has zero impact on your blood cholesterol. Cholesterol is completely synthesized by the liver. You don't need to eat an ounce of cholesterol. They've done studies where they've given people 10 eggs a day for months and they saw no change in your cholesterol. So this idea that you're eating too much cholesterol, raising your blood cholesterol, that isn't true at all. Again, thanks for everyone for being part of the Herbal X. This was a really great thing that we were happy to do, and I hope you find it educational and you learned a lot. So on that note, hope you all have a very wonderful Thanksgiving and enjoy the holiday with your families.
All right. Thanks. Nice to see y'all and good to see everyone. Take care.